Today we're talking about my husband's not gay, and I don't mean that my husband is not gay. I don't think he is, but we're talking about the viral TLC show, My Husband Is Not Gay. I wrote this in my notes app so that I could remember to have a reaction video to it, and it was funny to open my notes app back up and just see the words, my husband's not gay, like I am writing an affirmation for myself. The title of this show is immediately eye-catching because if you have to clarify that your husband is not gay, methinks the man doth protest too much. This show is about 4 Mormon men who live in Salt Lake City, and they are men who they say are experiencing same-sex attraction. They're not gay, they're struggling with same-sex attraction, and this one episode briefly follows their lives as they attempt to reconcile this struggle with their religious beliefs, which is that you should never act on being gay. Essentially, all of these men are engaging in a kind of conversion therapy-esque type thinking and lifestyle. I was very Mormon till I was in my early 20s, and so the lifestyles that these people are engaging with is very familiar to me. I heard the term SSA when I was still a member of the Mormon Church, basically in an attempt, they've branded this in an attempt to say that being gay is not an identity, but rather a kind of hardship or something about you that is a temptation that you struggle with. So SSA isn't something that is just made up by this TV show. This is a phrase adopted by the Mormon Church in order to help people who are gay essentially understand their struggle or their identity in a way that is still compatible with Mormonism. And so the idea is basically that you can have these feelings. This is not what I believe. I no longer believe that same-sex attraction is a particularly healthy way of viewing being gay. This is me explaining what I was taught and the background of the doctrine. Basically, within Mormon doctrine, the belief is now, it hasn't always been, but the belief is now that as long as you are not acting on these feelings, you are still essentially righteous. So you can still be in good standing with the church. You can still be out of the closet in a sense where you can talk about having this thing. In the TV show, as we'll watch, they talk often about, I have same-sex attraction, kind of like you might say, I have alcoholism. So it's almost a way for the church to have people kind of admit this identity or talk about it somewhat openly or bring it into the light a bit. In the past it was not even mentioned. Now they can at least discuss it and say it's a thing they're experiencing. But using the term same-sex attraction gives them the opportunity to engage with this part of themselves, but still have full standing within the Mormon Church and still hold a calling, hold the priesthood, go to the temple. So they can both have same-sex attraction and be active members of the Mormon Church. And that is a way to reconcile this disparate experience between their religious belief and their this thing they struggle with, they would say. But for these men specifically, it's not even just that they are saying, I have SSA, I'm Mormon and I have feelings of being attracted to men. They are also, 3 of the 4 men are married to women, and they also have children with the women. And so this is a step past, just saying, I'm I guess celibate, I have same-sex attraction, but I want to be accepted by Mormonism. This is a group of people, 3 of the 4 are they're married, they have families, and so this show is illustrating people who are going past even saying, I am attracted to the same sex, and so I'm gonna live a life of celibacy. These are people who are saying, I am fully basically kind of trying to ignore these feelings or not engage with them much. They do not fully ignore these feelings at all in the show, but they're people who are basically trying to go a step further, which I think is why the show has gone so viral, and say, I'm not just low-key gay, I'm also going to get married to a woman and have children because that is the kind of Mormon lifestyle, and I want to fully engage with the lifestyle that my religion has encouraged me to have. The whole premise of this show is really sad, and as I react to it, you'll see certain parts that are just kind of really messed up in my opinion. I feel like as I watched this show, I legitimately felt gross inside, and I felt sad for the people involved and felt sad for the people they were also attempting to pull in and involve further. As I said, this show has gone very viral on YouTube and on TikTok. To read some of the comments on the most viral TikTok videos, this person said, "Word for word, sounds like an SNL skit." And that is one aspect of the show, which is why I think it went so viral, is that especially certain clips, the beginning specifically, as you're watching, it feels like it's a parody. It feels like an SNL skit. It feels like everyone is in on the joke. And then when the shoe drops and you realize, no, these are real people. These are real people with real jobs and real families. This is not a parody. They are not speaking from a script. Your jaw drops even further. This person said, "Just divorce and let the both of you find the men who will make you happy." This person said, "This looks like something that belongs on South Park." I also found a common sentiment, which this person says, "Okay, but isn't she the wise one?" Speaking of the woman who's married the gay man with same-sex attraction, with a guy who is her live-in bestie and will be her hype man, and she gets to bone other dudes. Laugh emoji. And I think some people are misunderstanding what the most common dynamic is for Mormon couples in this setting is not that they're both stepping out on each other. It's not that they are in an open relationship. More often than not, it is just that they are kind of living a basically celibate lifestyle while being married. And so I think what this comment is getting at is a lot of people's conception of what this relationship must look like, which is that they are married, but then they also get to have romantic relationships outside of their marriage. But at least on its face, that is not the case with most of these types of marriages, or at least what they would say. There seems to be, which I'm going to get into, quite a bit of secrecy where the person is kind of having a flirtation or an extramarital affair, but they wouldn't admit to it. So in my experience with open relationships, people are usually not ultra secretive. They're not trying to hide something from their spouse. It's kind of something they've both consented to and talk about openly. I'm going to get into what I really think is happening behind the scenes, at least what I think is happening behind the scenes with the people in this show based on court documents. But to speak to this phenomenon overall is quite difficult because it's shrouded in so much secrecy. I have not been in one of these communities. I've just read a lot of Reddit threads. So there seems to be a whole swath of people who, some of which are kind of engaging in the soft swinging we saw in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, where they're engaging in a open relationship of some kind where there's some rules and there's some consent and they talk about it openly. There's the type of relationship where they never really talk about it and the man maybe is just occasionally home late and it's not something that is open within their relationship or that they talk about with other people. And so I think there is a whole swath of what people are doing in these circumstances. Here is the intro to the TV show.
We do love each other very much. We're best friends.
I wouldn't change anything about it.
There's no marriage that is perfect. Ours isn't. But with our faith in God, we believe we can overcome anything.
I like to say I've chosen an alternative to an alternative lifestyle.
I'm attracted to my wife, for sure. And I'm definitely attracted to men, too. He's a good-looking guy, for sure.
Oh man, I feel like that intro is kind of like a combination of Big Love, The Bachelor, and SNL all rolled into one, especially with that la 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 music that they play. And you feel like it's maybe gonna be a show about, the struggles of a marriage, the ups and downs, and then he's like, I'm attracted to my wife, but for sure I'm attracted to men too. And that is just a taste. Before we continue, just a quick reminder to like this video and subscribe to my channel. I have a new video every Friday. I talk about Mormon culture, Mormon doctrine, my experience as a Mormon and ex-Mormon. I also wanted to share the book that I wrote. It's called How to Leave the Mormon Church. This is a book that I wrote so that anyone who is leaving the Mormon Church has a resource about the things that I learned as part of leaving the church, like how to order your first cup of coffee, or how to get over, you know, the guilt that so many people feel when they try to wear a tank top for the first time. And so consider checking out my book, and thank you for subscribing. When this show first came out, it actually received a lot of protesting. It came out in 2015. There was a change.org petition to withdraw or pull the program because TLC is sending the message that being gay is something that can and ought to be changed, and that you should reject your sexual orientation by marrying someone of the opposite sex. The petition received 132,000 supporters, signatures, and so a lot of people were willing to put pen to paper and say, we disagree with the show, because it is almost its own form of conversion therapy. And what's more, in the show we see that 3 of the men are married, and they are basically indoctrinating the 4th, his name is Tom, indoctrinating him into finding a wife and getting married himself and pursuing the lifestyle that they all have. So they are basically doing conversion therapy on Tom throughout the episode. And so I'm completely not surprised that this show received a lot of backlash. To give a quick overview of this video, I'm going to give all my takes on this as an ex-Mormon. I'm also going to react to the show, as I said. I also did a lot of research into the fallout and the people's lives surrounding the show, which to me is one of the most interesting things to research about reality TV show, is to kind of dig a little deeper and see what else is existing in these people's lives. The craziest thing I found is that Jeff and Brett, 2 of the men who were married, are mentioned in a lawsuit about conversion therapy. Jeff is on the board of directors of a Salt Lake City group called Northstar. Northstar is essentially a meetup group. It's you know, they do conferences. They basically find people who are gay, or the people who are gay come to them, and they encourage them to live a SSA lifestyle that is compatible with the teachings of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mormons. And so Jeff specifically is somebody who's not just, you know, he's not just, I'm out here living my life, this is the lifestyle I've chosen. He is actively engaging in trying to teach other people to live this lifestyle, encouraging them to live the lifestyle. We'll see this in the clips I show. He is very much on the forefront of saying, hey, you can have SSA, you can be same-sex attracted and still be an active member. You could even find a woman who's okay with it to get married to. You can have children with her. And so even reading through, I'm going to read through where he's mentioned in the lawsuit, which mentions cuddling parties, touch and feel parties. So there's so much behind the scenes that I discovered that is happening in this show that I was just gobsmacked by. So I'm going to share all of that in this video. Here's a bit more of the intro where they're all sharing how they are living this life.
Well, I'm interested in men. I'm just not interested in men.
That's clear.
So are they gay or not? I get a little defensive when somebody calls my husband gay.
The whole act is against the teachings of the gospel.
I don't think people understand this.
I want to marry a woman, but I don't know how to work out these feelings. I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm attracted to men.
I love that they shove that in there. My husband's gay. My husband's not gay. And as much as I laugh, it makes me more like want to cry. I actually did cry while researching for this video because that's why I feel, you know, I know they're adults. I know all of the people in this show are adults, but it still is really sad. And I'm wearing my pride pin today because ultimately, as much as this show prompted a lot of joking and a lot of SNL skit jokes, you know, this is an SNL skit. It actually is rooted in a lot of internalized homophobia, a lot of self-hatred. Suicides and attempted suicides have originated from this doctrine specifically. There's a whole history, which if you're interested, I suggest reading, about how the Mormon Church has systematically used these doctrines to be awful to gay people and made them hate themselves, made the people in their congregations and in their communities hate them. And it really is, I think, you know, we see these men trying so hard to make the Mormon lifestyle work. And I think that shows just how much their ardent love of Mormonism is making them really hate themselves and be motivated to do things that are not within the realm of almost logic. Now these women are in this relationship with men who actively are telling them, I'm not really attracted to you, or I'm only attracted to you, you're the only woman I'm attracted to, which feels kind of like the same thing. As I've shared in the past, I had a student when I was a teacher in Utah who attempted, who I never saw after that because they changed him out of the school, who was, I walked in while other students were calling him an FAG, and saw, you know, the fallout of that. And the church's stance on gay people was one of the major reasons I chose to leave. There were many reasons I chose to leave because there are so many things to find objectionable about Mormonism, many of which I've shared on this channel. When I was leaving too, it was around the time where a singer called Tyler Glenn, who's from Neon Trees, came out with his album Excommunication, and one of the lines in his song is, I tried to kill myself and I'm not the only one. He has a music video where he shows the secret temple handshakes, and in that video it's a music video, he also spits on a photo of Joseph Smith, who has his face painted like a clown. And I identified with that music video so much when I was leaving the church, because I think it really captures the anger that a lot of people deserve to feel about the messages that Mormonism taught them about themselves, whether it's teaching women they're second-class citizens and they shouldn't have the priesthood and they should marry men who will then be the heads of their household and they should be subject to them, or if it's that you're gay and that you're evil, and, you know, as I mentioned in the video last week, Orson Scott Card saying gay people who are attempting to live a lifestyle where they are with another person and with, you know, another person of the same gender, and say that that's not a sin, that's okay, those are fools and hypocrites and they are sinners. And these are the doctrines that I was raised with. Even though I'm not a member of this community, I still feel a massive amount of empathy for the people who are kind of on the front lines of this doctrine. And I was looking through, there is an entire Wikipedia page dedicated to LGBT Mormon suicides, and it lists some of people who committed suicide and some people who attempted. One of them that really stood out to me is Stuart Mathis. He died by suicide in the year 2000 on the steps of a California church Mormon building. After that happened, two others a few weeks later, DJ Thompson and Clay Whitmer, also committed suicide. So that's three in just a matter of weeks. Stuart Mathis, it might be Mattis, before his death wrote a note saying, "The church has no idea that there are surely boys and girls on their calloused hands and knees imploring God to free them of their pain. They hate themselves. God never intended me to be straight. Hopefully my death might be a catalyst for some good." And I think one thing that I found to be shocking, I would have been 8 years old when this happened, and because I was born in 1992, and I've never heard any of these people's names until I read through this Wikipedia page. I've read it before, but as an active member, if you had asked me about any name on this list, I would not know who you were talking about. And that to me speaks of not just the horribleness that is that these lives were lost, but that the church does nothing to educate its members on the costs of these doctrines, that my family never introduced these names to me. The fact that these all, you know, this is a very long list, that these could happen and I do not recognize these names, to me is, I'm horrified by that. And so a quick thank you to whoever compiled this Wikipedia page. I'll link it below if you want to go read through. But I wanted to highlight that as we jump into this video, because most of the comments on TikTok and the YouTube reactions are all just funny. My husband's not gay. It sounds like it's gonna be a joke. It sounds ridiculous, but it's these people's experiences. And many people, rather than live the lives the men present in My Husband's Not Gay, have chosen to not live instead, or attempted to not live as a result of these doctrines. And so for anyone who is watching who might be gay or feeling like they're struggling with being gay, because of these doctrines. Just a final statement from me that these doctrines are quite damaging and they are not true. You are not evil or bad for being gay or anywhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. Those are things that do not make you bad or evil. You are still a very worthwhile person. You deserve to hear that every day from everyone you love. And I think the fact that there are people who live this way is really sad, and ultimately people get to make their own choices, but I often think that the reason these choices are being made is because of very powerful outside forces like religion. And so you deserve to make the choices that come from your heart and not to make choices because of a dogma that teaches you something that isn't true, like that you are a bad person. A final plug for that Tyler Glenn album, which I've always loved so much as an ex-Mormon. It feels like he literally wrote it for me, but he has another song that says, "I found myself when I lost my faith." And I've always loved that song because it feels very true for me as someone who really put my faith in front of me, really put my faith as at the center of myself and kicked myself out the door in the process. And so if that's just a final plug, if you wanted to listen to that, I found that album to be really cathartic in the sense that he is kind of mourning the loss of his faith. He's allowing himself to be angry and frustrated and just allow himself to feel the emotions associated with growing up, learning, and being taught to hate yourself or to see yourself as less than. And so with that being said, let's watch the next clip that I wanted to highlight from the show. We first get introduced to Jeff and Tanya, who in my opinion are kind of the ringleaders of the group, and are probably the biggest as far as my research, also just loom the largest in this community specifically.
We've been married about 9 years. We've got one delightful son. And I guess one of the most unique things about our relationship is I experience SSA, or same-sex attraction.
Not gay. SSA.
Who will I notice first? A beautiful man walking down the street or a beautiful woman walking down the street? I'll notice the beautiful man 9 times out of 10.
So it's somebody.
I think it's more like 10 times out of 10. I just have to say a quick side note that the way she's dressed is so Mormon. That is such a Mormon outfit she has on here. And really the entire show, I just think their entire style is very, very Utah Mormon. So I like those little details to point out because it, what she's wearing here to me is just so perfectly more active Mormon woman. She's got the dress, she's got the chunky necklace, the dress down to the ankles. And this tips us off to what I was most surprised by, especially about Jeff and Tanya. And I'll pop this little graphic up whenever I'm talking about people because it's easy to get them confused. But the thing that surprised me most about Jeff and Tanya's dynamic is that they do seem to be, as I said, there's a spectrum. There's the people who are totally celibate, even within a marriage. There's the people who are kind of talking about it and maybe just joking around about it. And then I think Jeff and Tanya are definitely both, in my opinion, going out and finding other people to have relationships with. Just the way they talk about it, I feel like I'm getting the sense that they both have these other romantic relationships that we don't see it on screen, but it's hinted at throughout. So we see him checking out the runner and, she's even kind of laughing with him. And this doesn't feel like she's jealous. This feels like they're both in on the same joke together.
We're Latter-day Saints or Mormon, and the only acceptable expression of sexuality and romantic feelings is within a marriage between a man and a woman.
When Jeff told me about his same-sex attraction, it was definitely the worst time in our relationship. We got home to his place, and I thought, he's finally going to say, "I love you." And instead he said, "I think you need to know that I'm attracted to men." And I was crushed.
Later in the episode, she reveals that conversation happened after they knew each other for 1.5 years. So he kept that from her for 1.5 years. And to me, I obviously fully think that if someone has something about their sexuality they're not ready to share, they shouldn't share it. But if you are entering into a relationship with someone who is not compatible with you, I think they deserve to know in that case. That is another element that popped up throughout the show, where they, not just that they know they are gay and then they're wanting to call it SSA, okay, fine, but then there's this theme of finding a person who you can get to be in a relationship with you and concealing the information from them until they're kind of far into the relationship. So that to me is really messed up. He also mentions that he gave her a bunch of books whenever he broke the news to her, which I think why so many people have issues with these types of programs, these types of personalities, conversion therapy, because it's not just that they're choosing to live this way, it's that they are writing books, they're holding seminars, they're hosting meetup groups, they are taking a very active role in encouraging others to live the same lifestyle. And I think that that's why I take more issue with this, is that it is in its essence conversion therapy. It's not just that this person is, hey, I'm gonna go do this, and I'm just living my own life. It's that they are basically being a missionary for living this lifestyle and encouraging others and saying, it's possible, look at me, I'm an example. It's past personal choice and into endorsement and encouragement of others. And I think that that is a much more morally fraught and in my opinion, bad thing for them to be doing. Also, before we continue, just a quick reminder to consider joining my Patreon. I post every video on Patreon that's on YouTube, but you can get it early and ad-free on Patreon. I also have bonus content. I'm about to share a video of me and my husband talking about what it's like to be a ex-Mormon and go home for the holidays and be around a lot of members and what what it's like to kind of celebrate the holiday season in a mixed faith extended family. So if you want to see that, or if you want to get all of these videos early and ad-free, consider checking out my Patreon.
I know lots of other of my friends that are in these same type of marriages, that are in good relationships, and none of us feel oppressed. We've chosen to be here.
Nate, you ready to go outside?
Interesting that she says that. We've chosen to be here. Can you really choose if you dated him for 1.5 years of your life before he told you? That's my question. I mean, obviously at that point she does have a choice, but I do believe that seems to be a philosophy very much presented in the show of getting the woman, getting her to like you, getting her interested in you, and then telling her, which to me is very deceptive. And then at that point, if you've sunk 1.5 years into a relationship and you really I'm sure she did love him at that point, then you have to make the hard choice of ending your 1.5 year relationship or staying with your best friend. Who is now kind of telling you, we're mostly going to be best friends. I can make it work. Maybe, we can have relations from time to time, but just so you know, I'm basically totally gay. And this idea of consent, is so frustrating to me because it's very similar to what I've said in the past about indoctrination, where if you were indoctrinated into believing that there's only one right way to live, and there's only one moral way to live, and you've been indoctrinated to think that since you were born, and you've gone to church, you've gone to camps, you've heard it from your parents, you've had scripture study, then can we really say it's a choice if there's only one option that's good and moral? For her, at least in this case, what I just said I think applies to all of Mormonism, especially for young people. I chose to leave in my 20s, but when I was in high school, I would have fully said, I'm choosing to be Mormon. I love being Mormon. But no other option had ever been presented to me as moral or good. And so I think in this case, she's like, I don't feel oppressed. A lot of Mormon women say that. Ballerina Farm also says, I choose this, I'm not oppressed. But it's hard to believe that that's thoroughly the case when you've been indoctrinated from birth to believe that there's only one right way to live, and you've never been encouraged to seek out any other options or lifestyles or viewpoints outside of what was presented to you as the truth. I am frustrated with characters like Jeff and Tanya because they're obviously holding up their relationship to say, this is possible, we're both happy, And it can work for you too. And Jeff is on the board of this Northstar group that I mentioned. But in my opinion, it's difficult to know where I stand with these people because I feel like they do seem to be doing it in some good faith, especially depending on the individual. They seem to be engaging with this idea in good faith. So when I served a Mormon mission and I didn't tell people about the crazy temple ceremonies, I didn't view it at the time as withholding information or as obscuring disfavorable aspects of my faith. I viewed it as they weren't spiritual. This is what I was taught. They weren't spiritually prepared for the knowledge yet. So it was the right thing to do to keep that sacred and spiritual and separate. And so that's the other aspect of this perpetuation aspect is, Pret also, who we're about to meet, is a marriage and family therapist. Jeff specializes in same-sex attraction therapy. So we see both of them perpetuating this idea that acting on your gay feelings is a sin, and you can live a celibate life, you can live a happy life while denying that part of yourself. This is what they're teaching in their therapy. And they're perpetuating this, but it feels like, at least depending on who you talk to, that the perpetuation is not malicious. They don't perceive they're tricking people. They don't perceive they're leading someone down a erroneous or a path of self-hatred. I didn't view myself as a Mormon missionary as this insidious person trying to sneak into your home and trick you into joining the Mormon church. I was very ardent and pure and hopeful in my pursuit of giving this beautiful teaching, giving Mormonism to people who were missing it from their lives. Unfortunately, though, it means that more and more people, whether they are doing it out of malice or hoping to help people, more and more people are caught in this machinery of you can live this way and it's good. And then it spins out and damages more and more people's lives. This is a clip from someone named Stacy Harkey. He was somebody who was very well known at BYU. He was in a comedy group. He also was in one of my congregations at one point. Hi, Stacy. In this clip, he's sharing what it was like for him when he first came out and was talking to church leadership about how to navigate his sexuality and his religious beliefs. So this is that clip.
And at this point, I started talking to bishops and leadership. I was like, hey, listen, this thing isn't going away. I feel like I'm made this way. This thing isn't going away. What do I do? And they're like, marry a woman. And I'm like, wrong. Wrong, sir.
What year was?
I'll link that interview below, but I did think he goes on to talk more about how bishops were encouraging him to marry a woman. And he also shares that felt immoral to him, essentially, because then you're now involving a woman who, you would say, I believe every person deserves to be with someone who loves them, finds them attractive, and makes them happy. And I think it's interesting how often this advice seems to be given to these Mormon men who are, basically told, you should find a girl who's okay with it and marry her. And the dismissiveness of that sentiment, the dismissiveness to that woman, I love that Stacy is saying, no, I'm not doing that. And I think it's so sad for both of these people who are being taught, at least for Jeff and Tanya, they seem like they made it work. And the three married couples in this, it seems like, if we're taking them at their word, it seems like they made it work. But to then turn around like this bishop is doing or they're doing and say, look at my relationship as a beacon of light, you should do this too. Find a woman who's gonna be okay with this. That to me is where it really gives me a stomachache and makes me feel awful. That they're taking this idea of that there's gonna be some woman who's okay with it and go out and find her, make it so that instead of being with someone who could really, really love her, both romantically and sexually and, in every way married people expect to be loved, you should kind of just dupe her into falling for you and then pull the rug and say, I'm attracted to men, and hopefully she has a good enough heart to say, well, I guess we can just be besties and you can impregnate me. There's a part that I'll show you where Pret kisses Megan on the mouth and he's like, And no one should have to be in a relationship where that's the case, especially if they kind of know going into it that that's the case. And the Mormon Church has an entire network of therapists. So there are tons of marriage and family therapists who are hired by the church to engage in teaching like this. So when I was at BYU, I had my bishop set me up with a counselor, and she was very instrumental in a lot of my mental health struggles. And I don't want to toss that to the side. She was very helpful in my mental health issues. However, there came a point, I had met with her for years. There came a point, which you all know about, where I started to question my Mormon faith. And I had a session with her, and I told her, I'm struggling with my belief. And I think that if I had told that to almost any non-Mormon therapist, they would have just listened and helped me work through it in the same way she helped me work through all of these other problems I was facing. But she strongly advised me to not have a faith struggle, to not leave the church, and that I needed the church as a resource in my life, and that it was a net positive. And she basically was, past me initially telling her and having this back and forth, this probably 1 to 2 minute back and forth, she was not willing during that conversation to entertain my faith struggles and how that was impacting my emotions. And that was the last time I spoke to her. Which is kind of crazy that I had this woman, this therapist in my life for years. She helped me get ready for my mission. She helped me prepare in all these ways. And yet, if I overstepped the bounds of what she viewed within her role, not just as a licensed therapist, but as a Mormon licensed therapist or adjacent to Mormonism. I'm not fully sure if she was linked in with the Mormon Therapy Network or if it was just that she was Mormon and her Mormon faith was dictating what she had to say to me about the subject. But I lost that therapy relationship that I had been part of for years and years. And if you've ever been in therapy, you know that getting a new therapist kind of sucks. First of all, they're just hard to find. But second of all, you have to tell them all of the things all over again. And even uttering some of these struggles about your mental health it's embarrassing, it's difficult. You don't want to have to repeat it over and over again. Having a therapist stay with you for years and years is very helpful because they understand what you've been through. They know your story, you know them, it's an actual real relationship instead of having to go off and find a new therapist. And so in my experience, the horrible aspect of the Mormon Church of Therapy program is that they are ultimately not just following best practices for therapy. They are, licensed therapists, they're following the rule book, but they are also having this other element of counseling, which often does, for in cases like this, turn out to be similar to conversion therapy, or what many would just call conversion therapy, where just like when I went to that therapist and said, I'm having a faith struggle, and she heavily counseled me against leaving or engaging with those doubts, that happens with gay youth as well, and gay adults, where if they go to the therapist and they say, I have these thoughts and they're really causing me a lot of heartache, can you help me? They will actively often say, I know it's a sin, we both are on the same page that it's a sin, this is actually called same-sex attraction, here are some pamphlets, here are some books, here are some groups. Have you considered trying to marry a woman instead? And the evil, in my opinion, of these therapists and these groups is that they're presenting their knowledge as professional counseling when it's really just religious messaging. And that is really confusing, especially to young people, to hear their licensed therapist counseling them in a religious tone and setting, and with the religion as the underpinning motive of giving them advice or help. Let's now consider together what are often the implications of following through with someone like Tanya and Jeff's advice. So the implications are that, okay, so you have same-sex attraction. You find a woman who will have you. You impregnate that woman, sometimes multiple times. You have a family together. And then And I've literally seen a Mormon family like this. At a certain point, it becomes untenable, and the couple can't stand it anymore. They're unhappy because they are not living a lifestyle that matches who they are as people. And this unhappiness then often ends in divorce. To cite a statistic, apparently 70% of mixed orientation marriages end in divorce. So that is one stat. So by the time you're divorced, you've been married for decades, you already have kids. Often the wife has been a stay-at-home mom, and so the divorce implications for her mean that she has no degree, she has no education, she has no way of making an income, and so the divorce means that she's statistically more likely to live in poverty. Single moms experience poverty at much higher levels than single men. And so after years of trying to make this relationship work, at the council of these people who run things like Northstar or engage in conversion therapy groups or are counselors for the Mormon Church, your life is now torn to shreds. The children are now impacted by their divorced parents, which, does happen, but doesn't need to happen at a rate of 70%. And so this advice often leads to an entire family's worth of heartache. And that's why I think it's so awful, because they're starting on the path knowing that this is a thing and then continuing to walk that path anyways, which then often means there are just more and more people involved. Families, kids, wives, husbands. And those things, those paths might not have been taken were it not for the massive amount of encouragement that seems to be present in these types of groups. Next in the show, we are introduced to Pret and Megan, who have been married for 8 years. They met at 15. Here's Pret and Megan.
I feel like I'm the winner of life's lottery. Like, have you seen her?
The first thing that went through my mind was kind of the first thing that goes through every woman's mind. Will he be attracted to me? At the same time,
to clarify, that does not go through every woman's mind, because most women aren't with gay men. This is not a common experience.
At the same time, though, it was, well, at least he doesn't have anybody else to compare me to.
Because that is the bar for romantic relationships. We also meet Tanya and Curtis, which, as I already shared, I think are, in my opinion, more of the average same-sex attracted man married to a woman that I've seen. Let's watch them.
Someone can experience sexual attraction towards both women and men. In mainstream America, they're considered bisexual.
But you don't identify with that.
I don't necessarily. And if you look at most of the studies that have been done about sexuality, they'll show you that sexuality is fluid, it changes. But ultimately, when it comes to our faith and our belief, what matters is how we act. Have I made mistakes in our marriage? I have. But with my belief in God, all things that I struggle with, if I turn to him, can be for my good.
We need to get out the books of Mormon. I think there's some in the cupboard over there.
Our spiritual beliefs are very important to us, which is why we frequently find time to pray with our friends.
Okay, so this is another theme that pops up a lot in this show, which is the men low-key mentioning they've made a lot of mistakes, or there's been times that things got out of hand. That they never actually share what that is. And that's why it's so hard to know what this actually looks like on the ground, because they are talking about it in this kind of nuanced or, code where they're not just coming out and saying, what does that mean? And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people might hear that and say, okay, mistakes have been made in my marriage. You cheated on each other, or you cheated on your wife. But that isn't usually what that means often in Mormon culture, because even watching pornography is considered cheating. And pornography, as I've said, might not even mean he's watching some really crazy stuff. It may mean he's looking at pictures of men in underwear, because that is also considered pornography. So there's a whole spectrum of what he might be alluding to with that. He might be saying, there's been times where I've been tempted and I looked at men in the gym and that was wrong. He might also be saying, I've had relations with a man, or I carried on a infidelity over a period of a few years and realized I needed to come clean to my wife. So that's why it's a little frustrating sometimes, especially hearing Mormon people talk about stuff like infidelity or anything to do with this topic of sex in general, because they will say something that to the non-Mormon ear sounds like one thing, but within a Mormon context means something quite different. So you know, a joke might be that somebody really went off the rails one night, and you're like, oh, you went off the rails one night? That must mean you did drugs. But they are like, I stayed up really late and watched too many movies and ate a lot of cookies. We then in the show see that Jeff and Tanya come over to Curtis and Tara's house so that they can all study the Book of Mormon together. They also bring an unsuspecting person named Rob, who they're in the show, they're going to break the news to him that they experience same-sex attraction. Rob is an active heterosexual member of the Mormon Church, and here we will get to see his reaction to this. Brett and Megan are there too, so all of them have kind of conspired to bring Rob. My guess is the producers asked them to bring Rob into this, and are now going to explain to Rob what it is to have same-sex attraction.
Where we stand and what we believe. If it was accepted to be a homosexual in the church, would I be gay? Or would I live that lifestyle? Maybe 8 or 9 years ago, 10 years ago, the answer would be yes. Today, no.
I guess you've clued Rob in on what we're experiencing here,
Yes.
what we're about.
Yeah.
When Curtis first told me about his SSA, the first thought I had was for his wife, how would it affect his relationship with Tara? Because a lot of families, they fall apart when they're faced with struggles like this. There's a lot of SSA in Argentina. Did I tell you that?
No.
Yeah, that's a big problem down there, too.
What do you mean by SSA being a problem?
Well, the whole act is against the teachings of the gospel. In the Mormon faith, we do not practice homosexuality. See, we believe in procreating and making children and living the gospel and between a man and woman.
Their reaction to him here, especially Jeff, he's like, it's a problem? Like, it's interesting to see that these men they all seem to have internalized homophobia, but then when Rob has a different type of internalized homophobia, they're very offended, a little pearl clutching there, and that's not particularly surprising, but it is kind of interesting because to me, Rob in this scene is your average standard member of the Mormon Church who he's almost looking around at them like, whoa, you guys are Mormon. Why are you taking issue with me saying it's a sin? And yet, because he's not describing being gay in the way that the church has sanctioned, which is to say, well, as long as we don't act on it, it's okay to admit that we struggle with same-sex attraction. Rob just looks a little bamboozled. To me, Rob's kind of ignorance here is very indicative of your average standard member who isn't even educated in the same-sex attraction version of being gay. They are just full stop, it's a sin. There's not a lot of nuance there like Jeff, Brett, and Curtis are trying to engage in. He just comes across as uneducated. If you caught, he kind of trips over the word homosexuality, almost like he doesn't really quite want to say it out loud because he's not really practiced in talking about these topics to begin with. Here's the rest of that clip.
There's so many people in our church that don't know the difference between having a gay lifestyle and having the same-sex attraction.
What the LDS Church teaches is that behavior is a choice, that choosing to act on these feelings is what it's all about. Having the feelings, not so much.
The line is a black and white line.
Rob's reaction here actually did make me laugh out loud because he gives this kind of like up down like, what? Which is the same face I think everyone made when they heard the name of the TV show, because he's basically saying, why does this exist to begin with? You know, he obviously also said, I'm a bit concerned for Curtis's wife, who is now living like this? Is, are you guys okay? What's going on here? This distinction between thoughts and actions doesn't seem to hit with Rob, but it is the kind of bread and butter teaching about gay people in the church, which is that, like I've been saying, you can be same-sex attracted, you can admit it, you can struggle with it, but you cannot act on it. And sometimes when people come to their bishops and admit this, they're even told to join addiction programs. I've seen that quite a bit in my research, where they are asked to join a Mormon 10-step program, which is kind of similar to the Alcoholics Anonymous program, and they're counseled that they have an addiction to the same sex and that they should engage with viewing themselves as someone with an addiction to a bad tendency. So being gay basically gets thrown in with being an alcoholic, having a pornography addiction, any number of sins you're tempted by, gambling, being gay is just another sin you're tempted by. We're all tempted by sin. You're just tempted by a different sin than me, because I'm tempted to throw my money away when gambling, and you're tempted to be gay. And that's kind of the way it's viewed. So it's not a huge sin to want to drink alcohol, but if you do it, that's the big sin. And so this mentality is why they're also seemingly comfortable with checking out other dudes, which we'll see soon in the basketball scene. They're very comfortable to give the men the up down and talk about their bodies and kind of almost fantasize about being with them, but as long as they just don't partake of the fruit, then they are in the moral clear. And this mental gymnastics is kind of fascinating and horrifying to watch, because watching them legitimize, the idea that none of these people would drink coffee. That's really bad. But they would marry a woman they're not attracted to, and that is A-okay, as long as she mostly is okay with it when you drop the news a year and a half into your relationship. So the moral framework of their entire outlook feels so mind-boggling, because how can you say that, wearing a tank top, all of these women are very modestly dressed. They would never wear a tank top, but they would engage in this type of mental gymnastics, and even encourage Tom, who we'll see soon, to withhold the truth from a woman so that she can get an emotional relationship with him, and then he can drop the news. So I just find, so as is often the case with Mormon belief, that the moral framework, the way that they are viewing good and evil, seems so skewed, because it's not connected to real world harm, it's not connected to kindness and human decency and recognizing the humanity in every person. It's connected to rule following, which makes people act in very illogical ways.
When it comes to being married in the eyes of God and then staying committed, it would make no difference whether Brett was going and having inappropriate relationships with a man, or if I was going and having inappropriate relations with a man. I feel frustrated when people don't understand what it is that Brett's going through and the choice that he has made to be married to me. And when people question whether he is living up to his true identity, no, I know that he has made the choice that is the most true to himself.
I see you guys showing up with your beautiful wives and you just look like regular people to me. I do not understand SSA.
Rob is confused, as is the rest of the world. He does say this one funny line at the end there.
People as people, not by their sexual orientation.
Those are good straight cuts.
Yep, straight as a gay guy.
Oh, I love his little joke at the end. Straight as a gay guy. And they all laugh. And they, you can tell, he's kind of making a joke. They all do still use the word gay. It's like they just are holding it at arm's distance. And I have to be honest, I've never been gay. I've never had to face this question. What I just keep going back to is the fact that they are encouraging others to live this way. And Megan says, hey, I wish people wouldn't doubt that my husband, Brett, has chosen this lifestyle. Fair enough. But to be a counselor and to tell Tom he should also live this way, you are evangelizing, and you're going a step further than just honoring people's personal choices. in my opinion. Another common question that I saw posed on the viral TikTok videos is, why are these people willing to do this? Why are they willing to go on camera, say these lines, talk so openly? And this is something I also saw on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and any reality TV show. People often ask, like, why are they willing to do this? And I very much can speak to this phenomenon from a Mormon perspective, because just as Jeff and Brett are evangelizing through their therapy, this media they are making is also evangelization. That is why there were 130,000 signatures on the change.org page for a petition to take the show down or to not air it or to discontinue it. Because ultimately, when you make media like this, and throughout the entire episode, these people are repeating over and over and over again, you can do it. Look at us. We are happy. We chose this. We are not repressed. We are living our best lives. This is also evangelization. This is just another way for them to encourage others to live the lifestyle that they are showing us on this show. As I've talked about before, Mormonism is very missionary minded. So they are essentially just being missionaries by going on TLC and showing the insides of their home and showing their children and talking about their sexual history in their marriage. They are being missionaries for Mormonism and for the SSA married to a woman lifestyle. This question, why are they willing to do this, reminded me of a time that I was in a documentary briefly. This was basically an opportunity I got as part of being at BYU. I worked pretty hard to dig this clip up from the past. This is me as a Mormon at BYU, and this Australian commentator, documentary producer person basically came to BYU and Utah to do a series or talk about Mormons. And I wasn't super familiar with the project. I was in part of it. Basically, he came to have a dinner with us and kind of interview us about our experiences as young members of the Mormon Church. And so I have this clip of me bearing my testimony as part of this. And I think that this is an example I thought of when I was considering, why are people willing to go on camera? And when I go back and look at myself on camera, I think the same thing. Why was I willing to do this? And it's because you are so thoroughly encouraged to be a missionary for the church. And how better to be a missionary than to be in a documentary and you can bear your testimony and, stand up for what you believe in on camera. So here's the clip of me in the documentary. The kicker too is that my husband was also in the room during this conversation, so you'll see a little bit of him as well. He was not my husband at the time. We were still dating though. And so, like, when we give people the Book of Mormon, it's not like, here is an introduction to the Mormon faith, as much as here is proof that this church is the true church of God. And so it'd be interesting for me, at least, if you would, like, pray about it.
Bless his food and immerse.
So that's the clip. I swear, me with that voice, I can't handle it. I can't handle the missionary voice. I would love, at least for me, if you would pray about it. This was also after my Mormon mission, so I still was, Mormon missionaries call it the commitment pattern, where you're supposed to commit somebody. I wasn't so heavy-handed as missionaries are supposed to be, because you're supposed to use a will you sentence. Will you commit to read and pray about the Book of Mormon is what I should have said, but I was a bit intimidated by the person who was interviewing us. So anyways, I think here, I'm on camera, I'm bearing my own testimony, and I'm asking someone to read and pray about my favorite book at the time, the Book of Mormon. And so this is really common. There are even church talks that are very easy to find where Mormon leaders are encouraging people to post on social media, to put at Jesus Christ, LDS.org, whatever, in their bio, talk about it during the Christmas season. Part of the bedrock of Mormonism is missionary work. Full stop. My husband is not gay next brings us to a scene where all the guys go to play basketball together. Here is that clip.
Today, myself and some SSA friends, we're going to go play basketball, and we're going to bring my friend Tom.
You ladies ready to play a little ball? My name's Tom. I'm 34 years old. We're going to go play a little basketball. You mind taking the do-rag off? It's not really a thing.
It's not?
You want to join?
We'll be sure.
So I think it's funny that Jeff literally calls him my SSA friends, which is essentially the same as using SSA in the same way an identifier as gay is used. Me and my gay friends, me and my SSA friends. The phrasing of that sentence is obviously indicative that he does see it as an identity, not as something he struggles with. So I thought that phrasing was interesting. I also think it's funny that Jeff wears a do-rag and Tom is like, can you take that off? Jeff is definitely giving the vibe of someone who wants to play sports but has never really played them. Here we meet Tom, who kind of self-describes as a more masculine person who struggles with SSA, aka that he's also gay, and he's the one that's single that I've been talking about, and he is kind of hanging out with these three married men, and they are about to induct him into and encourage him to begin to find a woman to date who he can marry and have children with and live the TM Mormon lifestyle. Tom is 34 and he's never kissed a guy or a girl he shares. He's the version of Mormon who is active in the church and is gay or same-sex attracted, who is totally celibate. Tom is my favorite of all of them. You'll see at the end why I like him the most, but I think the rest of them, especially Brett and Jeff, having read the court records, I feel the most icky about them. Tom gets some thumbs up for me, at least more so than the others. At the basketball game, we see the men begin to engage in something that actually really surprised me, considering they are active, married Mormon men.
I played basketball in high school, coached basketball since I was 17. These guys don't play basketball. Are you kidding me?
I don't think I'm playing basketball to make me more manly.
I don't feel like I fit the mold of guys that are attracted to other men, other than my deep and abiding love for Broadway show tunes and the attraction to males. Those are the two things that are kind of gay about me.
Anything dangerous for you?
Maybe one. This whole one would be great.
That's what I'd say. When I'm out with the guys, yeah, we'll look at other guys for sure. What's the danger score?
What's the danger score? Here we get introduced to the danger score, which is what was surprising to me. And they kind of begin to ogle the other men playing basketball and talk about who they think is hot, who they think is less hot. And they introduce the idea of the danger score. And this is what the danger score is defined by.
To bring out some of the inner feelings and figure out, oh, okay, that is attractive to me, and I didn't even realize it.
The danger scale goes from 0 to 4. A 1 on the danger scale is you notice, you look.
A 2 means you looked again.
A 3, you'd be tempted to turn around and look again and again.
4 pretty much means you're requiring restraints. Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'd go higher than that.
I'm sorry, you're requiring restraints? Sometimes the way that they describe this it's just fascinating to listen to. What I found surprising about this is almost, okay, hear me out. I feel like my experience in the Mormon church is that there is a attitude towards men, which is very boys will be boys. Men who are married will look at, other women. Men are tempted. Men can't control themselves. Don't expect too much of them because, of course, men are this way. Men are, a little sleazy sometimes. That's just the way it is. And it's very excusing of men not being fully faithful to their wives in the sense that men are sexual creatures and we have to just know that about them and know that if they engage in, these types of activities like flirting with other women, even maybe messing around with other women, it's a little slip up. It just happens. I was fascinated, honestly, to see that mentality that Mormon men are taught, which is that they can't control themselves when it comes to this topic, and they are, they're basically subject to, if an immodest woman is walking down the street, of course he's gonna look at her because that's just the way men are. I was fascinated to discover in this that same theory about the way men are is also being utilized by these gay men towards other men, and that the wives being somewhat okay with it, or at the very least unsurprised by this, is also still adhering itself to the same philosophy, which is boys will be boys. It's just interesting to see that they kind of capture this mentality that men can't control themselves, and they harness it in the danger scale for gay men. And it's a little bit more permissible, because just as men are attracted to women sometimes and they can't control themselves, of course that is going to happen in the marriages where the gay man is married to a woman. I also thought it was funny that the danger scale is literally just how many times you're tempted to look. And this whole subtext of restraint, I feel that this seems like an appropriate time to get into the court records surrounding these two individuals. As I was watching the show initially, I decided to look up more about Northstar, because these two men's involvement in it is very, that's really standing out to me as something that's recurring in a lot of threads about the show itself. So I found this thread from 9 years ago, and it's called "The Poisonous Subculture Brainwashing That Is Northstar." It says, in part, there's a widely spread concept in Northstar called holding. The idea is that gay men feel misplaced attractions to men because they just need non-sexual physical contact with males, and then they'll be fine. Besides a steaming pile of horseshit, one problem with it is that all the guys that give this a try don't realize that calling something non-sexual doesn't make it so. This leads to them spooning and calling it bro time. Gay men in Northstar who are married to women actively practice holding with other men. My boyfriend's friend, who married a woman, has been treating him weirdly since we started dating because they can't cuddle anymore. Probably the craziest thing I ever heard was one of the longtime married prominent leaders of Northstar, maybe it was Jeff, say in a private message that he had done holding with another man while naked, and that it was one of the most spiritual experiences he'd ever had, and that it was like being held in the arms of the Savior. Wow, we are going down the rabbit hole here. So I found this thread and I was just combing through it, because holding, this is something they never address on this short special. This is a single episode. They never had a follow-up episode with any of these people. And down in the thread, I discovered this lawsuit. To kind of summarize, there was a lawsuit between, it was Ferguson versus Jonah. This is where it was featured on Wikipedia. You can read below. And basically, a ex-Mormon, along with some others, is suing Jonah because they said that that this conversion program would turn them straight. And he is suing them because he's saying, it didn't turn me straight and I wasted a lot of money on this suit. And I read some of the court records. The court records were like 2,000 pages, so I didn't read every single one, but I did read the portion mentioned in the Reddit thread. So this ex-Mormon who's bringing the suit actually did participate with Northstar, and he also participated in one of these holding parties, these cuddle and hold parties. So this is from the court transcript, which I will read now. And just remember, as I read it, the people being discussed are Jeff and Brett, who are also in the TV show. Same people. Let's talk about some of the people you met in Utah once you moved there, and I want to explore your relationship with two of the people who may be defense witnesses in this case. Do you know someone named Jeff Benyon? Answer, yes. Question, has Jeff Benyon ever described his sexual orientation to you? Jeff told me he is primarily attracted to men. Then there's a quick objection and overrule. Has Jeff Benyon ever described his sexual orientation to you? Yes. What did he say? Jeff told me that he is primarily sexually attracted to men. Thank you. Did you know someone named Brett Dahlgreen? Yes. Has Brett Dahlgreen ever described his sexual orientation to you? Yes. What did he say? Brett has told me that he is exclusively attracted to men, with the exception of his wife. Have you seen Jeff or Brett recently? They were recently on a television show on the Learning Channel. It was called My Husband Is Not Gay. So I saw them on that, but as far as in person, I have not seen them. So it sounds like the experience that he's about to describe here happened before the filming of My Husband's Not Gay. Can you describe for us the first time you met Jeff and Brett? Yes, Jeff and Brett would hold activity nights. So one of them was over at Jeff Benyon's house. Jeff of Jeff and Tanya. It was just a little mixer in his basement. What do you think the purpose of this meet and greet was? That was just an opportunity for men who were same-sex attracted and also Mormon to get to know each other. Did you go to any other kind of events at Jeff Benion's house? Yes, I did. What kinds were those? Some of the activities were a movie night, one was a sports night, and one was a touch and holding night. Why don't we talk about those individually? Let's start with the movie night. Jeff and Brett had a group over to watch the movie Gladiator. There were probably 15 of us, so this is all in Jeff's basement. We turned the movie on, and during the movie, Jeff and Brett would push pause at different points in the movie. In the movie, there's men had six-pack abs and big pecs, and we would stop it and talk about their bodies. So before continuing, to me, it sounds like what happens at Northstar from all of these Reddit threads and this and the things I've read is essentially, at least for a subset of the group, maybe it's a little more secretive, essentially they do kind of exposure therapy where they allow themselves, as we see in the basketball scene, right? They are allowing themselves to experience these emotions without going all the way, which is very similar to the soft swinging in Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, where they do everything but have sex. And it seems like this is very common. Maybe it's because Mormonism is so rule following that they come up with, it's okay if we do this as long as these conditions are met, because then we are still a-okay in the eyes of the Lord. So it's basically, I think, in my opinion, a way for them to engage in the behavior in the activity without having to confess to the bishop, even tell their wife necessarily. And it's crazy too that these are happening with a group that is very pro-conversion therapy. They're saying basically, to me, this is a way for us to engage in the activity that's still righteous, and we all should go out and marry women and be doing these things, and all of this is still above board. Question: you mentioned something called a sports night. Yes, what was that? That was a night where they watched a football game and they invited a college football player to come over and teach us what football is. Again, the participants in these nights, who are they? What kind of people? Who are they? Men who are gay, who are Mormon, who are trying to overcome same-sex attraction. You also mentioned a touch night. Yes. Tell us about that. So the touch night was also in Jeff Benion's basement. There were probably 330 men who were there. That's a high number. All of them were same-sex attracted. This particular night was not all of them were Mormon, some were Catholic guys, some Protestant guys. We were instructed to look around the room, find someone who created a charge, and then ask them, the phrase we used, if they would give us Golden Father energy. A couple of questions about that. Who was doing the instructing on that night? Jeff and Brett. You use the word charge. What does that mean? Charge is also one of those code words that you learn on Journey into Manhood, which is another conversion therapy program, from my understanding. And it's a replacement word for same-sex desire. Was there any music playing? Yes, there was some soft, and it was like new age music that was just playing in the background. Did you receive any kind of holding that night? Yes. From whom? From Jeff Benion. How long did it last? I would guess it was about 30 minutes or so. You're not looking at your phone, you're being cuddled, so you're not checking the time, but it seemed like about 30 minutes. Were you ever nude with Jeff or with either Jeff or Brett? Yes. Tell us about that. So then they go on to say basically that they did a sauna, and that was when they were nude with each other. So I feel like what they're describing is like a little, kind of like a soft swinging club, this touch and holding night, where there's all these men and they're all looking to pair off and cuddle each other. I also found this. Jeff gave an op-ed in the New York Post during this lawsuit to basically say that it is really wrong to try to curtail the power of conversion therapy programs. And he gave it in 2012 or 2013. So you can read his a low attack on same-sex therapy. You can read that in the links below. But it seems to me that Jeff is, I think there's also, to me, what feels like a predatory nature to a lot of what I've seen described in these conversion therapy programs, where they have these earnest young gay people who are really ardently looking for community, compassion, and help coming to these programs, spilling their secrets, getting emotionally connected, and then getting roped into having sex with people, gay men, and who are leaders. Usually it's like, it seems like the leaders who are sticking around are like, I'll show you the way. And then they use their position of power to sleep with people who are young and at risk and vulnerable. And so that's another reason why Jeff gives me the ick, and Pret does too, and then like standing there like with their little danger scale on the basketball court, because to me, based on not just this court story, but also lots of Reddit threads, it seems to me that often these people use this as an opportunity, these groups as an opportunity to meet people. And often the people who they're meeting are trusting them with their deepest, darkest secrets and expecting them to lead them through this difficulty that they're facing. So it's just a situation that is ripe for abuse and for abuse of power. And I think that seeing them named in this way, you know, I can't imagine going to one of these groups expecting that, you know, if you are in a Mormon mindset and you actually believe that conversion therapy works, that if you go and you pay a lot of money and you go to the conferences and you participate in the seminars and you meet these people and you get these relationships, God will take the gay away. He actually will. And they actually believe that that's the case and that's what they want. To be in that setting and then to go and be in a touch and hold night and doing nude sauna and, you know, checking each other out and being like, oh, well, it's still righteous as long as we're not having sex. But in a lot of stories, none that I saw with Jeff and Pret, but some of the stories, and even named in the lawsuit, some of the leaders are just using it as an opportunity to find people to sleep with. That's messed up. It's taking advantage of people who are in a very vulnerable situation. The ex-Mormon named in the lawsuit did also write his personal story in this article from the Salt Lake Tribune, if you want to read through it. I found this to be an interesting read, and I think that him standing up, and this was, from what I can tell, a fairly landmark case against conversion therapy. If you want to read the rest of his story, I suggest checking it out. Next, we see the girls go on a hike, and they are talking about girl time and how important girl time is.
Isolate yourselves from your real girlfriends. You don't get enough girl time. I agree. It's definitely something that I need more. I get jealous of when Pret has all of his guy time. That's really important for him to get his guy time. I make sure that's a priority. One of the things that our husbands have learned the value of is to have guy time. And because we're Mormon, our guys don't go to the bars and drink. They don't, you know, sit around and play poker or go to strip clubs together or anything like that. They do it by going to the gym.
They just get married to women and then secretly go and hide their behavior by sleeping with other men. That's what Mormon men do, apparently. Once again, as I said, the moral framework of this is quite confusing.
Gym, they'll hang out and watch movies. They'll go play basketball together. And it's so healing for them to have these good non-sexual relationships with guys that they can just go and be guys with. He comes back even more interested in our relationship and committed to our relationship when he's had that time with his friends. Do you guys notice that when you guys?
That was sad too. Guy time. We learned a bit about guy time in that Reddit thread, and I think it's interesting that she notes that he comes back from guy time, even more committed to their relationship, and it feels like he was satisfied during guy time, and now he's ready to go back to the lifestyle that he's choosing, and now has like a little bit of. He's had a release, as they say, and now he can go back and be the Mormon married dude that he wanted to be after his guy time. So I think when the girls are talking about girly time, I don't know if the girlies on the hike are doing the same thing that the bros are doing on the during the guy time. Later, two of the couples go to dinner together, and they have a server who is on the danger scale, and let's listen to that conversation.
Niçoise?
Of course.
Hello. Welcome to Boulangerie. Don't laugh, it's not that funny.
Yes, it is.
Can I get you all an appetizer to start? You know, your hummus looked good. Your hummus plate. It's excellent. Great. We'll try it.
Okay, thanks.
Did you guys notice anything?
He's a very good-looking guy. We have a very open relationship. And this is just one more way we try to be open. And I found it's more freeing to just acknowledge, yeah, that is a beautiful man.
I'd say I need a little more of the masculine butch. I need more of the all-American guy.
That's your type.
Well, yeah, sure. At first, in our marriage, it was awkward, and it was not awkward, it was just...
Oh, I think that as the show progresses, you realize more and more that the kind of montage we saw at the beginning where they're like, we want to be committed and we're same-sex attracted, but we love our wives. And then by halfway through the episode, they're just openly talking about their types in front of their wives, and their wives are asking, oh, you like the all-American type of guy. Yeah, I like him a little more butch. I've never been married to a gay man, but to me, even if we're switching genders, even if these men were talking about a woman, which they do often make the comparison in the show, if the server is a woman, they have a hot woman for their server, and then to their wives, they're like, oh, I prefer brunettes, that's still insulting. But they keep reiterating throughout, hey, this is our choice, this help, these types of conversations help us feel close together. It reminds me, I've heard the term monogamish. They're monogamish together, they're not monogamous. But it does make you feel like, for these two women, I think Tanya, as I said, I have a theory that she also is having relationships outside of the marriage. Megan, I'm not so sure. And I mean, Jeff and Brett, these two men that are sitting, they are actively kind of flirting, you see in the show, with this server. And they're also holding touch and hold nights, at least a few. It just seems to me like they seem so unhappy, or like the choices and the decisions they've made with their lives are so obviously not in line with their identities and who they are and what they want to talk about. It just, I think, is very, very sad. And the idea that you can either be celibate as a gay Mormon or you can live this is very bleak. And I understand why so many, I think most people who I know who are gay do leave the church, and they are willing to just say, I'm not gonna, I'm coming clean. Usually when they come out as gay, they also leave the church and seem much happier. And I think that seeing them, so flippantly just flirt with the server and then discuss their sexual preferences of guys in front of their wives. That's why everyone says it sounds like an SNL show, because it's almost unbelievable. After they go to this cafe, then we see a scene where they go with Tom to pick out some clothing. They're kind of doing like a queer eye for the straight guy type of thing with him, where they are dressing him in nicer clothes and encouraging him to ditch his basketball shorts and stop being so, like, it's almost like they're teaching him to be gay without teaching him to be gay. And they also, when they're getting clothes, continue to check out other men who are also buying clothes in the shop. Back at home in this clip, Jeff asks Tanya if he can go camping with the guys. I think of all the clips, this one had the most views or likes that I saw on TikTok.
I think me and the guys are going to go camping in a few weeks.
Camping?
What's that look?
Who's going?
A couple guys you don't know.
How well do you know these guys?
I don't know them very well, actually.
Being with someone with SSA comes with its own set of challenges. When my husband goes on these overnight trips, I've been concerned, just because anything can happen. Do you remember the incident that happened at the house a couple years ago?
There was one time a couple of guys slept over at my house, and let's just say things got a little out of control.
I trust you.
Was it the touch and hold party with 330 men, where everyone was asking for golden father energy? I hear this when, remember that incident from a few years ago, and it does feel like, oh, that was like the incident she walked in on. How sad is it? Really, most people can just be gay. And you just can be with who you want to be. I think in this case, I find it to be very sad that she is mothering him feels like she's being the mom of the boy, saying, "You're not allowed to go camping with your friends, honey." And even the fact that he's like, I also don't know the men I'm camping with. It's a blind date, I guess. She also refers to these overnight trips as if there are multiple, many. To me, this is, like I said, had the most views and likes, and I feel like this is really the crux of the sadness that I think is present in the show, where ultimately neither of them are satisfied. Neither of them get to live a life that they seem to be happy in. They both are keeping each other from living in the way that seems like it would make them the most happy, and I just think everyone deserves that as like a basic human principle. The reason they have to get the house ready is to finally have the blind date for Tom, and during this, Pret and Megan make the announcement that they are pregnant. They're gonna have another child, and I thought that Tom's reaction to this was the most poignant, so here's that clip.
An exciting time to be able to move forward and to be pregnant again and to have the joy that pregnancy brings. I feel like you're left out over here.
Congrats. Seeing Brent and Megan so happy really hits home for me, and it reminds me that this is what I want. I'm just not sure that I'll meet a woman that I feel attracted to enough that I can move forward and build a life with.
Enough about us. Let's put the focus back on Tom.
Let's not
You
put
ready?
the focus back on Tom.
So Tom's face there, to me that was another sad part, because you can see he's just jealous that, you know, he wants a family, he wants a child, he wants kids, he wants what the Mormon church romanticizes for us all, which is that your truest happiness will be found within family life and children. This is another example where Pret and Megan are basically saying this is what you could have if you can convince a girl to marry you. You can have someone to bear your children. The sad part is that it feels that he feels that the only way he can have the life he wants is with a woman. You know, if you're gay, you can adopt, you can do surrogacy. If you're a lesbian couple, you can use a sperm donor. Families are possible for gay people, if they so choose. You know, some choose to, some choose not to. But I think that Tom's face here was really sad for me, because I think that he is looking at them as, you're living what I dream of having, but also what they have is touch and cuddle parties and, you know, I forgot to show you the clip where Megan kisses him and he's like, ew.
Doing well, how are you?
Good, you got lips on too.
I do.
Lots of lips.
Like, he seems nice about it. Like, he's like, ooh, you got lips on. Ooh, lots of lips. He just seems like he doesn't want, like, he seems a little grossed out. And maybe it's just I would say maybe it's just the lip gloss, but he's also gay. So I think I can safely say he doesn't seem to deeply enjoy kissing his wife at the end of the day. He's wipe. And, you know, I don't think a lot of people dream of that. You know, a common TikTokism is, may this love never find me. You know, even Megan at the beginning was like, I think most girls, when they hear this, say, will he still be attracted to me? And it's like, girl, most girls don't date gay men. And if they go on a date with a gay man, they certainly don't go on a second, third, fourth, and then marry them and have their children. This is not a common experience that every woman has. And I think seeing him kiss her was another pivotal moment for me, because it just is illustrative of, you can try to force this, you can try to make it work. They've even figured out how to procreate, they have children, been working on this little family project, but ultimately on kind of like a base level, it does not seem like there is compatibility, and that's not very surprising. To go back to the blind date, this is where they start to discuss whether or not Tom should reveal to his date that he has same-sex attraction. And Tom seems like he's saying, yes, I should, which is why, like I said, I like Tom more than the rest of them, because Tom is team transparency. The rest of them, though, are discouraging him from telling her. and saying, you should wait. Go on, go date her for a few months. Get to know her better. Then tell her. Here is a clip of Tara saying she does not think he should say anything. Also, quick side note, they also lie and say the reason there are going to be cameras during the blind date is because they are filming a documentary about Mormons in Salt Lake. So they do even go as so far as to say, this is why there's cameras here. So they lie. They say this is why there's cameras here. They do not, though, explain the real reason they are all together. So here's that clip.
I usually don't shake hands and say, sorry, that was so soft. I'm attracted to men.
I feel like Tom should be honest with her, but there's a time and a place to share everything about yourself. And I don't think the first date is probably the ideal time to tell her about everything that you struggle with.
I waited too long, so don't do what I did. I waited, a year and a half?
I waited too long, too. 16 years.
So now we see the date arrive, and she's like a Mormon Zooey Deschanel. She's very cute. But we see her arrive, and she comes and sits down, and then during the whole dinner, they're making jokes about the subtext that we all know as the audience, and never telling her about these inside jokes.
If we could just put off any SSA conversation for as long as humanly possible, that would be great.
So how do you guys all know each other?
Unbelievable. Jeff does work.
Why are we changing the subject?
No, just because. How do you say we all know each other through our mutual admiration of men without really saying that?
We could really make it serious and I could talk to that.
I love that.
So that's most of the dinner. They keep kind of dancing around it and having a lot of long, awkward pauses.
I love dogs too.
Did you grow up with dogs?
Kind of, yeah.
What kind?
A wiener dog.
That's a very appropriate one.
That's the kind of dog you should get, Tom.
The conversation at dinner was interesting. I can tell that there are a lot of shared experiences between the people at the table that I'm not privy to. I'm having a great time. Yeah. Are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am.
Oh my gosh. She seems like she's pretty much rolling with it. But this poor girl, and that's why I feel so icky about all of this, is because they're kind of all in on this scheme to get this girl. This is apparently one of Tanya's friends. They're all in on, everyone at the dinner table other than her is in on this scheme to entrap her into a relationship with a gay man. Tom later walks her out, and despite all of the advice from all of the married gay men, he decides it's the right thing to do to tell her the truth, which I think is also the right thing to do.
If I were in Tom's shoes, there's no way I'd tell this girl on the first date about my SSA.
Well, it's getting late. I've got to go.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate it.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
great to see you again.
I like this girl and I want to see her again. So I feel like I want to be honest with her and I'm nervous about how she might respond. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
It was probably a little awkward.
Blind dates usually are, aren't they?
Yeah. I don't want to keep you out here too long. I'd like to take her out again. And so I feel like I want to be honest with her and tell her about the SSA just right up front. I don't know how to tell you this.
Okay.
I deal with something called same-sex attraction. We call it SSA, but I'm attracted to men. I'm attracted to women too. I wouldn't be on a blind date with you if I wasn't.
Are you, Tom? Are you attracted to women too? It feels like he's never said that really throughout the whole episode. He's saying he hopes he can be, and he's like, I mean, they're all almost basically claiming bisexuality, but only for the one woman they happen to be married to, which I don't know if that technically is bisexuality, but it's a spectrum, I suppose. But I think, and Tom, his cheeks turn so red here, and I feel so bad for him. I feel like he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to be a good Mormon guy. He's trying to deal with the fact that he's gay, and being gay is incompatible with his religious beliefs. And at the high levels of encouragement from all of these same-sex attracted men, he's now going down this path. And the idea, you know, that you could spend your life, according to the statistic, 70% of these marriages will end in divorce. And the idea that you are setting down the path of this relationship, kind of knowing that it's, if not doomed to failure, at least not set up to succeed, is really sad. And I think I contrast him here with seeing the news about them being pregnant and wanting to have these dreams of his be able to be in the same reality, and it feels impossible. And I think that's a lot of my sadness why this is part of Mormon doctrine to begin with. This is a lot of pain and suffering and self-hatred, and you know, like that quote from that letter, you know, Mormon boys and girls are on their callous knees from begging that this not be the case. And it really doesn't have to be that way. This is a fictional doctrine based in a fantasy that is not real or true. But when you're raised to believe it is the case, it feels like all-encompassing. That is basically the end of the show. He goes back in, he says that he told her the truth, and that's all we get to know in the show of these four men who we followed throughout this one episode of My Husband's Not Gay. And I did look up where they are now. There's a pretty good summary in this article. They are all still married. Jeff is on the board of directors for Northstar, which I already said, and he's also working as a part-time therapist. Jeff specializes in same-sex attraction, both through Northstar and his therapy work. Brett and Megan are also going strong and working in the therapy space too. Megan is a kindergarten teacher and busy mom, and Preston works as a marriage and family therapist. It also says he does still work full-time as a senior nursing director of surgical services for the University of Utah. So he's kind of doing both. You can find all of these people's professional websites very easily. This is Pretz, he's an LMFT. His areas of specialization are depression, anxiety, relationships, same-sex attraction, and addictions. Curtis and Tara are recently celebrated 30 years of marriage. Here's a photo of them taken from social media in front of a Mormon temple. They're just as Mormon as they've ever been. And then Tom is still single, and he's a teacher living in Utah. So that is kind of the update of where they are all now. I do wonder, just personally, curious how the resurgence of this video has impacted their lives now, because it seems like, from what I can tell, this had its initial debut about 10 years ago, and it seems like the response now is even louder than it was 10 years ago. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Consider checking out some of the links I put below, or watching the original if you are curious to see the episode in its entirety. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, or drop a comment below about anything that you noticed from the show if you've seen it, or any questions you have. And as always, I will see you all next week.